So I know we're not a lot of people here, but if I can ask everybody to just move up, maybe 3 or 4 rows from where you're sitting, so that we're not so far apart and we can actually hear everyone. Let's start off with a word of prayer. Dear God, Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this wonderful evening that you've given us, for helping us gather together, Lord, in your place of worship, Lord. Lord, we ask that the discussions that we have, Lord, may be fruitful for our lives, Lord. Lord, may we be inspired by what we hear, Lord, and may we be able to use it to further your purpose in our life, Lord. Lord, we ask that you bless everybody who is here. You enable and you give them the wisdom that they need to speak, and Lord, to inspire a good and meaningful discussion. Lord, we especially pray for Achin and his guidance and his leadership for this event. We pray for the panel speakers, Lord, who are going to be talking about their areas of expertise. And we also pray for everybody who's gathered here. We also want to pray for anybody who's not able to make it, Lord, due to various reasons. We ask that you bless them and keep them as well. Once again, Lord, thank you for enabling us to gather and to spend time to learn about things that, Lord, we need for our higher education. All this we ask in your matchless and precious name. Amen. So, thank you for coming. I know that, again, this might be the first time that you're hearing of something like this that's being conducted at our church, but it's something that's essential, right? So for people, for kids, students who are moving into their post-secondary education, for parents who are kind of asking those questions about post-secondary education, and also for people who are in universities and who are looking to further their careers. So this session is basically what we're trying to do is to create a meaningful discussion where we can ask those tough questions and gain some insight from people who have different areas of exposure in this regard. So we have various people who are going to be from from various disciplines and various walks of the university life, who are going to be speaking to you, and we ask that you keep your questions, specific to those areas of expertise, and also any generic questions that you may have. We ask that you engage or try to engage in a meaningful discussion with them. And once again, thank you for coming. We know that, for some of you it might have been a long drive, evening time, but your presence is very welcome here. With that being said, I'm going to pass it off to Achin, who's going to be our moderator for this event, and he will introduce the speakers and explain the outline for the event.
Good evening, everyone. I'm using this microphone simply for the fact that we are going online, and this is a recorded event too, just in case for everyone who would like to click and browse over all those intricate treasures of wisdom that we will be sharing among us throughout this evening. I would like to begin by asking a question while I am seated. What is the difference between a cauliflower and a cabbage? My question is very simple. Yeah, ഈ കോളിഫ്ലവറും ക്യാബേജും തമ്മിലുള്ള വ്യത്യാസം എന്താണ്? While you're pondering over the questions, this question, I would like to invite our speakers for this evening to join me on the days here. We first have Jason John. Yeah. Jason John is a member of the St. Matthew's Mar Thoma Church at Milton. And a brief about him, he actually belonged to the Canadian Mar Thoma Church, Toronto. He was born here, he was baptized here, he had his first communion here, he went to Sunday school here until he moved to India in 1990, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, and then he did his college education all across South India, and then he moved back to the North American continent, okay, various countries across, various states across, and now he's finally back here with us in Canada, where he actually belonged to once upon a time. Second, we have Sharon Thomas, who is again a member of our parish here, a very active member with our youth fellowship and a beautiful singer on the piano. Okay, she will be sharing her part of expertise with us, and I would like to, in the meantime, invite Joel to join me on the dais here with all of us. Joel is a student pre-COVID and during the COVID times, so his area of expertise is very, very, very special for us this evening. We also have joining us online all the way from Ottawa, Brianna Vergis. Hey, Brianna. Yeah. It's nice that Brianna's mother and brother are also joining us today. And along with these four people, I would like to invite Ashish Abraham, the newest entry into our parish roll call. Yeah. He will also be speaking to us from his area of expertise. So to start, let's come back to the question that I began with. What is the difference between a cauliflower and a cabbage? അതുപോലും അറിയാതാണോ കോളേജിൽ പോകാൻ പോകുന്നത്? അതുപോലും അറിയാൻ വയ്യാതാണോ മാതാപിതാക്കൾ പിള്ളേരെ കോളേജിൽ വിടാൻ പോകുന്നത്? See, Mark Twain, that's the pen name of the great writer Samuel Langhorne Clemens. He is the one who said, a cauliflower is nothing but a cabbage with college education. You know, a cabbage is so folded up, but a cauliflower is so open. And college education did that to the cabbage. So without much ado, let us begin with our symposium this evening, which is post-secondary life. To start with, secondary school, especially 12th grade, is that one time we all look forward to, isn't it? For two reasons. One, we are royalty, right? But the moment we step out of secondary into college, all the princes and princesses become paupers. You start from scratch, right? Jason John has been with college campuses for a while now. So he will be speaking to us about how students ought to be prepared to take on career along with their academics. And I would not take more of his time. Let us hear from Jason.
Thank you so much, Achin. And first off, thank you so much for the invitation, as well as to, I guess, Gino and Joel for informing me about this opportunity. And to be back home at the Canadian Mar Thoma Church. I'm pretty sure I saw one of my Sunday school teachers walking around here, but he was parked outside, so I'm pretty sure he's going to be coming in soon, and I'll say hi to him afterwards. But it's so happy to be back, as Achin introduced. My name is Jason John. Currently, I'm the Assistant Director for Employer Relations and Marketing at the University of Toronto in Mississauga. I actually worked for quite a while with Usha Auntie at Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly known as Ryerson, and happened to be a colleague of hers for about 5.5 years. I'd always bump into Auntie, and I'll be like, I call her Auntie by accident, and then go back to saying Usha. But with regard to the transition for students from high school to university, and then from university into the work life, there's so many skills and competencies that you can combine together that you gain through your academic life, as well as the chances you take. And that's the most important thing. I was about to outdate myself and use an old Wayne Gretzky, saying and things like that, but I think I'll use OG Anunoby from the Toronto Raptors when he made that famous three-point shot during the COVID playoff where he said, I don't shoot to miss, right? When they asked him, how did you make that shot? I don't shoot to miss, right? And so likewise, I think it's really important what I've observed, and Usha Auntie is here as well, and she could probably talk to you about her experiences here in case during the networking opportunity you have time to talk with us. I would say that the thing that hinders a lot of the students that I connect with, especially those that are in their 4th year, and I kid you not, at our career centers, what we do is around February timeframe, we stock up all our one-to-one rooms with extra boxes of tissue. And the main reason for that is students will come in and they'll say, hey, I want to do a resume review, or I want to do a mock interview. And 10 minutes into the conversation of a 30-minute one-to-one, they break down crying because they suddenly wake up and realize they're about to graduate and they don't know why they've taken the courses or programs that they have. Or they realize that the 3.5 years that have gone by, they have not invested themselves into transferable skills from their academic life into a practical world, so that they don't know how to interview, they don't know how to network, they don't know how to connect with people. And so likewise, what I would like to do is encourage you to start thinking about, how can I take my 4 to 5 year journey in college or university, gain those skills and competencies from everything I do, and transfer that into an applicable career opportunity if that's where you want to go to. Some of you might want to continue to be a part of the academic life cycle and go on to do research and do your PhD and things like that. There's so many things, but there's all these skills that you gain in between. So most recently, there's a program that I'm going to be starting, and it's called the Skills Accelerator Program. What I did was, I spent about 1.5 years ago, I asked one of our work study students to go through 4,500 jobs that were posted on the University of Toronto's website for one particular year. So the student went through 17,000 lines of job descriptions. And what they ended up finding out is the top 3 skills that employers were looking for from our students was number 1, Excel, number 2, Python, and number 3 was communication skills. And it's not just communication as in you're giving a presentation or something. It was more about taking large data and simplifying that into processable information so that you can share that with a leader who can make important decisions for a business. And so when you think about your journey as a student, well, where can you apply that? I know of my anthropology students that I work with that use bountiful amounts of Excel data. They use pivot tables and all sorts of macro-based solutions to simplify the problems that they're getting. I know students who use, anthropology students, who then take this data and use it into Python to create beautiful dashboards with insightful information that allow people to see data in a more clearer and crisper way. And last but not least, I've seen these same anthropology students, and everybody knows what anthropology is, right? The study of humans and things like that. These same students are using that data to present in front of their classrooms or lecture halls such as this. These are the things that Canadian employers are looking for, and students are gaining these exact same skills in the classroom. You just need to know how to translate that into your resume or into an interaction or you're at a networking event. But I'll go back to what I started with. You don't take, I mean, like OG Ananobi said, I don't take any shot to miss, right? I try to make it. And so I would encourage all of you, and for the students that are here today, you could probably talk to it as well, that if you don't take those chances to step out of your comfort zone, then you will be losing what you thought you could gain. The second thing, and I'll close off with this, I work with employers every day. My job is to lead my team to bridge our students with employers, our diverse student body with the employers we meet with. And I always talk to the employers, and they always tell me, the reason I come back to either TMU or University of Toronto, it's no different between the universities I've worked at. They continue to say the same thing. We already know, theoretically, what students are learning. We know what your syllabus is all about. We know that you have high-quality professors that are teaching very, forward-thinking thoughts and around education. What I want to know is, what did the student do outside of the classroom? Were they volunteering anywhere? Were they a work-study student? Did they take any leadership opportunities with the different student groups that are available? Forget all of that. Here at church, what did you do? Were you part of the youth group? Were you the accountant? Were you the secretary? Did you help out in arranging a program like this? Did you help spread the word of how this was through social media? Right? So what I mean by this is, you could always say you had a job at Starbucks and you were a barista that was serving coffee. Or you could be that student who meets somebody and says, I was a barista who was working at Starbucks. I served 23 coffees per hour. I generated $320 of revenue per hour, and 80% of my clients that left had a smile on their face. Who would you hire? The person who said, I just worked at Starbucks, or the person who explained what they've done? My young friends, as you take that leap of faith into the next journey, there's one thing I'll leave you with at the end. The power of prayer is your roadmap to success. And I kid you not, like Achin gave me a wonderful introduction, but there's so many backstories behind that. And without the power of prayer through my friends, my family, and others, there wouldn't be a way that I got through school and to where I'm at today without that love and care that I have. And so as you move forward and step forward into the decisions you make with your family, just remember to always keep in the back of your mind that the power of prayer will be the roadmap to your success. Thank you.
While Jason was speaking, I was just running in my head something that one of my very recent professors, Dr. Dibyashish from IIM Kozhikode, I was a student of IIM Kozhikode just before I landed here in Canada. He was telling me, if you can give me the numbers, I'll agree with you, or I won't. I also recall a professor who came to Madras Christian College where I was a student back in 1997. He was a linguistic researcher, and he was walking around the campus interviewing us to study what kind of English is it that we use in India at that point of time. Is it more American, is it more European, or is it more British? And every time we made an answer, he put down a number. So while you were speaking about Excel and then Python, And then communication skills. You know, the leadership that spears you forward is pretty much baseless or of no use at all if your numbers are not right. And the skills that we can actually garner through this journey, as Jason was saying, is putting those things into numerical values that the world requires right now. Yeah? So, before we move any forward, I would also like to bring in Joel a bit. See, Joel began his studies in healthcare right before COVID. So 2 years he was an on-campus student, and 2 years he was an online student. So, Joel, what was it like for you when you went through this transition?
I actually did 4 years at McMaster University. That was part of my first degree. And technically all 4 years I was actually on campus. It was towards the end of my final year in 2020, which was my fourth year. Around February, February, that's when we all got sent home, and that's when we really transitioned into the online component. But after my initial degree, I switched into nursing, which was from 2020 to 2022, and that component was mixed both online and in person. But primarily since the transition, it really depends on how well you can manage your time, like your time schedules, your assignments and your courses that you would encounter, because it's very easy to get carried away when everything's online. A lot of times the lectures are pre-recorded. So when it's pre-recorded, they kind of expect you to work at your own pace, but it can get easy thinking, oh, one lecture is 50 minutes. If I skip today, I can just catch up later. But it's easy to kind of snowball, and you'll end up at the last minute where you'll have like a test or an assignment that's due where you needed to complete a certain number of your lectures, but because you're behind, you can kind of not do as well as you could have on the assignment as well. So it's very important to manage your schedule. So in my case with nursing, a lot of it was practical as well, so I did have to go to campus quite a bit. I would say it was around like 70-30 split, so 70 in person and 30 online. The 30% online parts were the lectures. So with the lectures, it all depends on how your program is structured too. The way my program was structured was everything was online, and you kind of work at your own pace. You teach yourself, and whenever an assignment is due or an exam is coming up, you would make sure to complete those lectures and complete the assignments within that given time frame. You're free to work at your own pace, but they expect you to follow like a certain pattern where you complete maybe one lecture a day and you kind of review that content. So you're staying on top of things. But if you're not doing that, it can get very easy to kind of like get carried away, and you'll just lose track of everything that's happening. And when it comes to like in person, it really depends on your course once again. I know for some of my friends that were in engineering and they had to do the online component, a lot of the lectures was was online, and you had to attend as well. Whereas mine, I didn't need to attend. Everything was already recorded. So for those ones where you have to attend, those are sometimes marked, those are sometimes graded as well, so your attendance really do matter. But once again, it's easy to kind of get carried away. Like you're in front of a laptop, there's so many distractions around you. And I'm sure a lot of the high school students now too, they've experienced that online component of school as well, and it gets easy to like get distracted. But making sure that you're staying on top of it by creating, once again, that schedule is the biggest component that I can advise you guys to do. So managing your time, that's the biggest thing. Like there's a lot of regrets that I have had because of poor time management, where I've actually stayed up late night, lost sleep, ended up being behind on a bunch of other things, not eating good enough because I had to catch up on school. So in order for you guys to not go through all that, you guys have to make sure that whenever an assignment or something is coming up, you have a schedule set up. Usually in the beginning of every school year or beginning of every course, they'll have an outline, like a course content. So you'll know the breakdown of your courses, how much is each thing worth, when is it due. So based on that, you have to make your own schedule. Now everyone works different. I'm not the same as one of my friends. One of my friends can study the last minute and get away with it, whereas I'm not like that. So you kind of figure out your own strengths and skills as you go through the 4 years of school. To be honest, like going into my very first year, the study habits that I had from high school had to completely change. Because the way I studied in high school was not useful for me in university, whereas in university, it's a lot more application. Even the questions and the courses that I experienced was a lot application based. It wasn't like a lot of memorization. Like, I know the common phrase is the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So they won't ask you to fill in the blanks. They would ask you a question where you have to apply that concept. And that's how a lot of times some of the exams and testing material in university are. So once again, it really matters on how you develop those skills. It comes with experience. To me, I didn't really get, my best grades started showing up towards the end of my university career, like third and fourth year. But you guys have to make sure that whatever you guys have figured out moving forward, you have it planned from the get-go. Because sometimes it can be too late. Like Jason was saying, during their fourth year, they'll come in for their interview or like mock interviews, and they'll just break down because they don't realize that their skills are as developed as they should have been. So it's very important that you kind of have everything planned out from the get-go. So as you right when you get into first year, you got to figure out, okay, after my 4 years, is there anything that I need to do post-secondary? Or no, sorry, postgraduate. So like after your first 4 years of undergraduate degree, is there anything that you need to do in addition to that? So it really depends on how well you plan from the beginning, essentially. That's what I would like to say. And in relation to the online component, once again, time management is the biggest key that I can let you guys know.
Did you do your online studies all at home, or were you in a hostel anywhere?
So when I did my 4 years, so my first 4 years, from 2016 to 2020, I was at McMaster for life science, and that was in person. So all 4 years, first year I lived on campus, and 3 years I lived in Hamilton itself. And during my nursing, which was 2 years, and it had to be online and in person, I was working from home. I was studying from home. And when my placements, because I was in a Hamilton program, I had to drive to Hamilton to do my placements as well, which included my labs as well. But during the online component, the lectures, the pre-recorded lectures, I had to do all that at home. And like I said, it was very easy to get distracted, trust me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That brings us to a very important thing, and this is where Brianna steps in. Brianna is not just a hostelite, she is also a facilitator for people beginning hostel life in various institutes, and you represent one from Ottawa. So, Brianna, what is it that students leaving home, being pushed out of the nest, okay, ought to bear in mind when they first step into the home that they will have for the next so many years that they live on campus?
That's a great question. First, I'll just introduce myself quickly. So, I have been working with the residents for 2 years now. Last year was my first year working in residence, and my official title at the residence is a CA or a CC. So, as a CA, what that stands for is a community advisor. So it's just like in any other residence, the other names would be an RA or a Don. I'm basically living in a residence, and I am kind of assigned certain residents living here in the building. And I'm here to provide resources to give a helping hand. If there are any roommate conflicts, I'm there to mediate. If there is, any sort of issues or any questions about finding resources on campus or where to go or where to look, that's I'm one of the points of contact where students can kind of get that information from. So this year would be my second year, and I have been assigned for both my this year and last year. I was assigned to an apartment style, so I did not work in a traditional residence, but I did live in a traditional residence in my first year. Now, some advice I would give for students going and living on campus or off campus, it's a big change. You don't have somebody, looking after you. You don't have somebody doing your laundry if you're used to that at home. The biggest thing I've noticed, or biggest change, is there's nobody cooking for you unless you have a meal plan. So, like Joel had mentioned, living in residence and going to school and attending your classes, time management is a huge thing, not only with just your classes, but managing living away from home. Because every task that would have been done by your parents, any task that would have been done by your siblings or any other person in your family at your home is now completely done by you, depending on where you live. And then there are two different types of housing. So many students in their first year decide to live with the university residents. Some of them may be on campus residences or off campus residences, but are very close to the campus itself. And then the other option is, once you're in your second and your upper years, and even in your first year, if you choose, you can live, in an apartment outside of the residence that's not associated with the university. And there are a couple of pros and cons between all of them. Sorry, if I'm looking to the side, I just have some notes here so I don't forget. When it comes to on-campus residences, so you may have heard me say traditional and non-traditional residences. A lot of universities have two different general styles of buildings. They'll have non-traditional residences, which are built to look like apartments almost. The one that I'm currently in, you can have anywhere between 4, 5, all the way to studio apartments. And then the traditional residences would be you actually living with somebody on your floor in your same year within the same room. So some rooms you can have a single room where you are the only person living in that room. Other rooms you may have a single or two, it would be a double room. So that would be two people living in your room. And depending on the university and the residence, sometimes those beds are in the exact same room. And sometimes it's almost similar to an apartment style where you have your own bedrooms, but you are sharing a common space. So some of the pros about living on campus is living in residence on campus is actually a really great way to meet new people and meet people in your program. You'll have a chance, just like in high school, to meet people in your classes and get to know them. But a lot of the time those classes are, you're learning and there are lectures or there are labs, so there isn't as much time to socialize. Whereas when you're living in residence, you're living there, you're eating there, or you're studying there, so there's a lot more time to kind of run into other students. Another great thing is there are so many activities. Me as a CA, I'm in charge of planning activities for my students on my floor. I'm in charge of, hosting events and making sure that, they are meeting other people on the floor, and not just on my floor, but on, at different floors in the building. Another great thing is that it's a really diverse community within residence. So you will have, international students in your residence. You'll have students who are within the province or from, other provinces. And you'll also have students who are living in residence, but are actually from the local area. So that's also a great thing. You'll meet a lot of people of the same culture, of same faith. You'll also meet a lot of people of different faiths and different cultures. And one thing that I have really, really appreciated about living in residence in my first year was actually meeting people of a South Asian background, mainly in the area where we're currently living in the GTA. There wasn't as much diversity. So having people of a similar cultural background is also really great, because I found that I'm learning a lot in addition to what I learned at church about our culture from my friends as well. Another great thing about living on campus or living on campus residence is the option of having a meal plan. Some residences, depending on the type of university that you go to and the type of residence you're living in, I know residences like at Western, I believe, and also Guelph, some of them have a cafeteria or even a dining hall within those buildings specifically. Here at my university, we have one centralized dining hall or cafeteria in the middle of campus, and all residences on campus require that you have a meal plan. So if you live in any of the buildings that are right on campus, when you do accept your housing offer, it does say that a meal plan is mandatory with accepting your offer. Now, living off campus at this university specifically, in this building that I'm in, I am about a 5-10 minute walk away from campus. And because we're, a distance away from campus, we are not required to have a meal plan here. But one great thing about having a meal plan is that, you don't have to worry about cooking. Between your classes, you can go and have lunch. Before classes, you can go and have breakfast. After classes, you can go and have dinner. And food is always going to be prepared. The only time you need to worry about kind of, I wouldn't say wasting, but occupying throughout your day would be to go and actually eat. And it's actually a great time saver to go and get a meal plan. Now, again, depending on what your preferences are, you might not necessarily like the food at the cafeteria or dining hall, or you might really like it and it might be very convenient. But they do have a variety of options most of the time. So they'll have anywhere from, a pasta station to a salad station to, sometimes they have cultural food. It really depends on the university and where exactly you're getting your food from. And another great thing about living on campus is study spaces. In all of the residences, there are common rooms and study spaces where you can go and kind of meet new people and also study there, which is really helpful because, once you meet people in your program, studying with other people, depending on your classes, can be really helpful or it might not be as helpful. So there is that option. And in most residences, they have, desks where you can study. You have your own study space in your room. Some of the cons on living on campus is depending on the system that the university has, they might have a matching program for your roommate if you are living with somebody else, or they might not. So sometimes there are going to be cultural differences, personal, moral differences, and you might not necessarily get along with your roommate, which is one big con that I have seen quite a bit. And that's also another part of my job is to make sure that I can try and help mediate a conversation between roommates. But I'm also here for student safety. If a student is not feeling safe, then they can contact the student staff that is working that night or during the day to make sure that, they are in safe hands and they are in a comfortable and safe environment. And then there is also living off campus. Now, some students choose to not live on campus with the residents, but they do choose to live in their own apartment or in a house with some friends. Some pros to that is you have a more independent lifestyle. You're a little more away from the student lifestyle and away from campus a bit. So you're not as much informed, but you are kind of living your own adult life. It is a lot more of a change, I would say, in comparison to living in residence, just because in residence you do have people to help you out, whereas depending on where you live, and if you are living on your own in an apartment, you might not have that support. And it can also be cheaper depending on where you find your apartment. I'm not too sure what the rental prices are now, but it can be cheaper paying monthly at an apartment, a 5-10 minute walk away from your university in comparison to paying residence fees for the university itself and living in a university residence. And then some cons to that, I mentioned a lot about spending time cooking and, doing your own cleaning and such. You will probably spend a lot of time cooking unless you do choose to, get a meal plan aside from the fact that you're not living in residence. Depending on also your accommodation that you are looking at, if you're living in a condo or, in a house with fewer rooms, it might be slightly more expensive. Again, it depends on the circumstance. Another thing is in your first year, if you are living in an apartment away from university residence, it might be a little harder to make friends. You might not see as many people other than during your classes. So sometimes, you don't have those interactive activities like they do have in residence. Yeah.
within your program is very helpful. A lot of times, you're not going to be able to understand everything. And sometimes multiple minds come together and helps understand that concept better. But a lot of times there are students who prefer studying by themselves. So once again, like I said, it depends from person to person. But me personally, it helped me a lot because I had 3 friends especially that was with me throughout from first year all the way to 4th year that I relied on a lot, and they relied on me as well. And it was a give and take policy essentially. I scratched their back, they scratched my back. And we worked on so many assignments, studied for so many tests together. And I feel like because of them, I was able to successfully complete my program as well. So yes, I do think having a support system where you have a tight knit of friends that are within your program is very beneficial.
Thank you. Coming back to Brianna here. See, Brianna, you mentioned that you're learning more about South Asian culture a lot more than you could from back home here in Stowell. All right? That is a very integral part of education too. That's going to take you a very long way ahead in life. Okay? Can you share a little bit more about that with us? Because that part of education, okay, is something extra, a bonus that you get, okay, with your college life, with your university life.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily apply to just living in residence. You might even find friends of your similar culture in your classes too. From my own experience, I have a friend who is from Dubai, and she's actually very well versed in different cultures within India, and that's a lot that I have learned from her about different cultures, the different languages, and also different um, uh, I guess you could say within like more recently, like I guess the pop culture as well, and just learning, how certain things are done in certain cultures within India as well, and kind of learning the language, different languages. I've watched many, Tamil movies with her. I've watched Telugu movies with her. I've watched different things, and I've kind of immersed myself and allowed myself to kind of see what the other cultures within India are about, which I found has been very beneficial. And I've also learned, I have a friend who's Iranian, and I've also learned a lot about her culture. And I think that's one of the great aspects of living in residence is that I've met so many people. I've met international students. I've met students from here who are, really invested in their culture, and students who are not so much invested in their culture and who haven't been exposed to it as much. And it definitely has allowed me personally to grow a lot because I'm not only learning about other cultures, but I'm also having a greater appreciation for our own culture. Um, Living in residence in my first year, I missed our food. I missed my mom's cooking. I kind of found the food at the dining hall bland because they gave chicken curry or whatever they would call it curry, but it wasn't, as good. And so that's one thing that living in residence and having international friends has given me a greater appreciation. Yeah, so it's definitely given me a greater appreciation for our own culture as well as the other diverse cultures within India alone.
Brute force to move ahead and things like that. See, when it comes to your part of the job that you do in the universities with the students, where do you find these cultural traits setting people apart, okay, with advantages or disadvantages?
Yeah. So inherently, Canada is a very interesting country compared to any other country in the world because of the diversity within the larger cities, not like Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal. So you get to see a lot of this. I think it's interesting when you get into the workspace, you find affinity groups are built up, and there are different groups cliques that get together, and you could see the different outcomes from that. But when it comes to higher education, one of the most important things that we need to recognize is equity, diversity, and inclusion. And so at times when I bring out my South Asian spirit, which I think we are humble people, there's a certain level of our cultural identity which brings that sort of simplicity to how we engage with people. I think typically for us as South Asians, we open our arms and embrace people and welcome them. And so I see that happens a lot in my work. I find that I'm always very welcoming of the students or people that I work with. But I'm going to take it a step further. I think even my cultural identity from my religious aspect is also very, very open. So now, no matter where I work, so I've spent about 7 years in IT, but I think one of the most toughest industries to be in is I spent about 7 years in higher ed, but a larger amount of that time has been spent in IT, which has a very strong atheist, thought frame and things like that. But wherever I went, they knew I was a Christian. No matter where I went, I would always proudly say I'm a Sunday school teacher. I would always proudly talk about our church, the formation of a church, and I always start off with the simple story of, hey, when Jesus died, disciples went all across the world, Thomas came down to India, and that's how it always starts, right? It's a simple way of allowing people to embrace the culture that we bring, both from our identities as individuals, from a South Asian perspective, but even our religious identity is always seen day to day. That humbleness, that charitable acts that we do, and I think just that faith practice comes out for me naturally, day in, day out, when I'm interacting with students or other colleagues that I've had.
Thank you. Sharon, in your capacity as somebody engaging with a wide arena of extracurricular activities that universities have to offer, and especially, like to follow up from what Jason said, Christian activities in campuses, okay? What is it as a student now, or maybe a student that as a person who was a student just a little while ago, how to choose these clubs? How much time to invest in these extracurricular activities? How much can you grow as a Christian? What is your advice to college goers?
Okay, so I'll just introduce myself. I went to the University of Waterloo for environmental engineering, and currently, so I'm graduated, I'm working right now. So I was living there for 5 years. My program was 5 years. And so in terms of extracurriculars and Christian clubs on campus, so when you get to university, there is over 200 clubs that are available. So specifically with the University of Waterloo, there are over 200 clubs and over 30 athletic clubs. And this changes with every university. But you have such a wide range, which includes art, so dance, music, you have a cappella groups, you have band, you have strings, you have business extracurriculars, you have photography, you have, we have dragon boat racing, we have, blockchain club, quiz bowl club, there's so many. So one thing that you get to experience from going from high school, you probably have around 30 or less than 50 clubs. You get this wide range, and it's honestly such a great way to make friends. So when you're going into first year, and especially since I was going away from home and I didn't have my community in this church, clubs were the best place to make friends, including my program as well. But when you go to a club, you're meeting like-minded people in that club. If you have an interest in photography and you go to that student club, you already have maybe like 5 friends from that club. So I would say clubs in university or colleges, you should choose something that interests you. So I know in high school when I chose clubs, I wanted it to further my education, further my career. So I chose the environmental club, I chose math club or physics club. But then when I got into university is when I chose clubs that interested me. It kind of gave me a break from studies. So specifically for me, I was active in Power to Change. I was active in Engineers Without Borders and a bit in Habitat for Humanity. So I'll speak a little now more about Christian clubs and Christian fellowships on campus. So when you go to universities, there are three main Christian fellowships that you'll see in every single university across Canada. This is Power to Change, or P2C. There is Chinese Christian Fellowship, or CCF, and there's Korean Christian Fellowship, or KCF. Now, CCF and KCF, Chinese and Korean Christian Fellowship, they're not limited by your culture. I specifically know a Malayali who's on the leadership team of Korean Christian Fellowship, so you can definitely go and try whichever Christian club that you like. I was specifically involved in Power to Change, and this is a great way that I had to make friends, first of all. I had my university and my specific education friends in that program, and I also had friends in this Christian club. These clubs are not affiliated to any church, so they do recommend you to go to a church. This is just for, to have fellowship and to be involved in Christian events. So with Christian clubs, they have so many variety of events that really meet your schedule. So, for example, if you are only available at 7 in the morning, there are morning prayer meetings. There are evening Bible study groups. There are Friday evening large group gatherings. There are Saturday men's events. There are Saturday women's events. So you can choose which one you want to go to, and whatever meets your schedule. So it's also a great way, like I said before, a great way to make friends because, like Brianna was saying about culture, specifically within faith, you have people coming from a variety of backgrounds of faith, which is really interesting to see because right now here in this church, we're more exposed to people who grew up in the faith, right? We all grew up in the faith. But there you're seeing people who are missionary kids. There are people who, served in different parts of the world with their parents, and they grew up there. There are people who come from different faiths and converted. There are students, and these are all students. There are students who are hiding their faith from their family. There are students, again, who grew up in the faith. There are students who just learned about Jesus, and they want to learn more about what this is, and that's why they come to these clubs. So it was such a great learning opportunity for me to experience these or just be friends with all these different types of people from different faith backgrounds, but who are all there just to learn more about Christ. So that's a bit of Christian clubs. There are many other Christian clubs, but those are the three main ones on campus. And so in terms of extracurriculars, there are, again, extracurriculars that I would personally say, do something that is fun for you, but there are also ones that are furthering your career. I know specifically when Jason was saying about how students were crying to their counselors, I was one of them. That's why I was laughing, because I definitely cried to more than one counselor because of my education, and I didn't know where I was going with it and how to get a job. But there are extracurriculars that can help you with that if you want to further. For example, Engineers Without Borders was a great chance for me to put that on my resume, and a great extracurricular for employers to see that I was active in. So if you also don't have a lot of work experience, I would say put your extracurriculars on your resume, whatever you're involved in. Now, specifically when you go into first year, you are going to be faced with a heavy workload. You're going to be faced with a whole new pattern of learning. I had to, again, like what Joel said, I completely had to change how I learned and how I was, like my learning patterns. I had to completely change that when I got into university. So you are going to be faced with a heavy workload, but I would recommend do be part of at least one extracurricular activity, because you don't want to graduate and regret not being part of anything. So be involved. I would say do something that interests you. If you feel like your workload is a lot, like it was for me, I did something that interested me. I didn't do something that further increased my career. I did something like Power to Change, which was something that was relaxing for me. If you find music relaxing, do that. Be part of a club that just puts your mind away from studies. So yeah, that's basically a little about extracurriculars and Christian clubs.
Yeah, while you were saying this, I was just recalling my days as a hostler. See, I have no formal education in music, absolutely no formal education in music at all. But I did hum a bit, all right? I was pushed into music at college, I would say, and I would run away from music in college because somewhere in my classroom, one of my professors heard me hum a tune, and I was the only one there when he was walking in. He pulled me into the chapel choir, and the chapel choir at MCC is famous all over India. Okay, and Professor Winfred Chellaya is one of the most starred choral conductors, internationally renowned. And, well, to start with, I chose to be a seminarian while even in school, but it took me a long while to come around. My story is very morbid. I don't want to bore you with it. But then, after being in the ministry for 14 years, I don't know, music just came by my way, and music has helped me come a long way. Okay? So, all students listening to Sharon, I think you would also like to add this. You said choose something, right? But when you choose something, it can be the right choice or the wrong choice. Forget being right or wrong in the choice of your clubs, okay? Let's come back to where we started from. Career is what you're going to end up with. Yeah? How can your career be boosted by life with the club?
So, so furthering your career and furthering your education. Again, like when I was part of Engineers Without Borders, I'll explain that a little bit more. So this is a national organization started by 2 University of Waterloo students. And so what we used to do is do a lot of youth engagement. So we would go to, our organization would go to high schools or elementary schools or middle schools and talk about engineering. Sometimes we would talk about engineering, specifically women in engineering or women in STEM. We used to do podcasts as well where we talked about big solutions for big problems with long-term solutions. So when you are choosing a club or when you start and join a club, you don't really know if that's going to further your career or not. Yeah. That's when you start, right? But when you continue on, it's specifically consistency that I would say is key, because you want to stick in a club more than, that one meeting or maybe just more than 1 month. And then you can see results that can come, because there are, specifically when you show your interest, you can go higher up in leadership on that club. And that, again, can show better on your resume. So if you are the person in charge of podcasts, or if for example, you're into journalism, right? And your career is in journalism, join the student newspaper, do some editing. You'll become soon an editor in that newsletter. And your newsletter is going every month on campus, again, you can show the numbers and so show how many people or how many journals you've, edited, or it's not my expertise, but when you don't really know if it's going to further your career, but be consistent in what you're doing and results will show up. Yeah, I think hopefully that answers the question.
Yes, Jason.
Actually, I just want to add one more thing. I think adding on to what you're saying, Sharon, Joel, the example you gave of your 2 or 3 study buddies, right? see, the relationships you form in these clubs or external, 5 years from now, you don't know where these individuals might be, but they could be the foot in the door that opens you to another career opportunity. These are lifelong friendships, relationships that can help you, and if you have that budding opportunity and you form it at those early stages of university life, because for all of us that went to university or college and graduated, like those memories are retained more so than our school, high school, and things like that, and you build those lifelines. I just wanted to add that as well.
Thank you.
You don't know where that door will open for you.
And just to add on actually on that, when you're building, one thing that I've noticed in coming to university is that you're going to be surrounded with people who want to do something. They want to do something with their lives. They want to do something with their careers. They want to excel. You might not face that in high school. I didn't. I was surrounded by people who wanted to do various things in life in high school. But when you're specifically in university or colleges, you're going to be faced with people who are, you're going to be in the midst of that. And that really helps you to grow as a person in your career because you want to do that as well. You want to, if your friend is on the leadership team of a club, that's what you want to do now. If you have a friend who, is really doing well in school, your mind becomes like that. You want to also do well in school. So relationships are important in that way because when you're in university, you're going to be in the midst of groups of people who are like-minded, and you want to also be part of good people who are like-minded like you. Don't be with groups who want to slack off or who don't really have the same interests as you. Be with people who you want to be also.
If you're the smartest person in your friend group, you should look for another friend group, right? I think that's what they say when you're looking for your friends and things like that.
Now we are going to take a step into something very raw. Why? I remember my first day in the Mar Thoma Theological Seminary at Kottayam. The first class that we had was with Reverend Dr. P.G. George. Yeah, he was a resident of Canada for very long. Achan walks into the classroom, okay, he looks around, and he sees none of us with the Bibles. Okay, and he's a teacher of the Hebrew Bible. Okay, he fired us on the spot, and this is something that he said as he added to it. He said, "Make yourselves vulnerable. You're not here entirely to learn. You're here to unlearn." Ashish has something of that sort to offer to us because he, like Jason, was a student in India for very long, and now he's back here in Canada, okay, as a student in the Canadian system. So between these two educational cultures, what have you got to say to children who are leaving, students who are graduating from school and entering into colleges, or people who are in colleges, okay, in terms of making themselves vulnerable, unlearning to learn?
Right. Okay. So, I came to just as an introduction, right? So, I came here as an international student, and back in 2015, and I came to U of T as a grad student. The only thing I knew about Canada back then was that's just cold. So, while coming to university, I think the first and foremost thing that you should remember is you're going to be treated as an adult. It's as simple as that. There's no one going to spoon feed you stuff. No one is going to just tell you what courses to take or what study material to study. Most of the professors, at least when I have been in university, even India or in Canada, most professors just give you a guideline of what are the topics to study. And when you get to exams, it's a lot about as Joel said, it's a lot about application of what those topics are. So when coming from India to Canada, from what I learned in India to how the system works in Canada, it's very different because no one really cares if you actually get a good grade or not. Not even the professors care. They just care to teach you, and if you want to learn, they'll teach you everything that you want to learn. But your grades or your career or what you get out of university is totally up to you. And when it comes to again, coming to a difference between how an Indian education system versus a Canadian system works, I've found that, like, I've been a TA for a couple of courses in U of T. I've seen undergrad students, a lot of them are really independent. And some of the good students, they will go beyond what is required of them. And that is what sticks with professors as well. And because if you go out of what is required of you, and if you go beyond what is required of you, even the professors and the TAs actually recognize you. And if you do that, that actually opens up more opportunities for you down the line. Because I've been part of the lab, I've been a TA. When I am TAing courses, I'm actually looking for undergrad students who can work in our lab and who actually can contribute to our projects. So that's one major difference that I see here, that even professors are open to having undergrad students get that experience in, get them to help the professors in their projects. And in the long run, like about 3-4 years down the line, as Jason said, these experiences actually help you buff up your resume. And these experiences are actually highly valued by the companies. So if and as an international student, it's something that I had not seen back in India, where generally the professors are supposed to be revered. You don't consider them to be like your friends. You just basically consider them, okay, whatever they say is the word of the God. You don't really say anything against it. But once you come here, I realize you could question everything that the professor says. They actually encourage you to question what they say. And I actually had a professor who would intentionally say the incorrect formulas on the board just to see if someone would correct him. I had one professor like that in my grad school, and thankfully it was grad school, so there were some smart guys who actually would correct him. But that is the kind of attitude that professors have. They are not there just to do their job and go ahead. They actually want you to learn. And again, that's where it stops. They want you to learn. They are not going to spoon feed you into doing stuff, saying that, okay, you study these courses, you'll get A grade or A plus grade. No, that's over. That's actually over in your high school. You're not going to get that from now on. And as I said in the beginning, you're going to be considered an adult, and you are supposed to take responsibilities for all that you decide for yourself. Any actions, any decisions that you do, you have to bear with the consequences, and you reap the benefits of the same. And again, from a cultural perspective, so that was just from an academic perspective. From a cultural perspective, coming from India to Canada, this is something that I love about Canada. Thing is, people generally say Canadians are nice, but Canadians actually don't know how nice they are, because you have no clue. Because I was studying in Canada, and I had an internship in US, where people were generally nice. But the thing is, Canadians are so nice, you get offended if you go out of Canada. If people do anything over there, you actually get offended by it. Because I remember an instance where, like in Canada, everyone kind of keeps the door open for you. If you're walking through, people hold the door open for you. In Boston, where I did my internship, one guy did not keep the door open for me. And for 5 minutes, I kept thinking, man, I'm so offended by this. Like, why didn't he hold the door open? And that's a huge cultural shock, especially coming from India, where most people are work for themselves. So it's a huge cultural shock where in Canada, people care about each other. People care about strangers even, for that matter. And that's a big shock for me, and in a nice way for that matter. At the same time, and also from another cultural perspective is people like to complain about the cold, I guess, but it's not really true. People complain, but they actually enjoy the winter as well. It's like a simple, Canadians kind of want to complain about something in the world, so they just try to find a winter to complain about, I guess. But in general, this is, and okay, again, just shifting gear back to the academic, like one thing I forgot to mention was, I was in U of T, and Canada, across Canada, you have some of the most technologically advanced universities in the world. Yeah, even if you just look up at the rankings of the universities, it's one of the top 50 rankings universities are in Canada. We should actually, when you guys go to university, take advantage of that. Because most of the professors or the research that most professors do, or the facilities that you get, that is incomparable. Like other universities, especially I come from India, where my university, to a nationalized university, it didn't have a 10% of the facilities that I saw in U of T. The opportunities that you get to see, the exposure that you get to see. That is something that I saw in Canada, and something that everyone should take advantage of. Also, again, from an international exposure scene, I would like to say my lab was a perfect example of how the whole Canadian universities mix baggers, because we had 10 people in the lab, 10 of them from 10 different countries. Actually, okay, 8 different countries. Two of us from India, two of them from Iran, then I guess across the world, like one from Serbia, one from Ireland, everyone. And the funny thing is, when you start talking to them, like you're in the lab, you do talk to each other. And then you realize how the whole perception of the world itself is different across countries. You might think, okay, like we are born in a certain way. We are born, let's say I was born in India. I know these are how things are supposed to be. It's a very different viewpoint when you actually start talking to people from other countries. And from India, when you think, okay, my problems are like big, then you start talking to those people from, let's say, from people from Iran, etc., you realize, wow, I'm lucky to be in India, because there are some things there are those kind of exposure that you get that I believe you all should take advantage of. And again, not to extend myself, just as everyone said here, when you're studying, I would say definitely make a study group. If not just for the studies, for me personally, I have benefited from it because, again, I was homesick quite a lot. My friends helped me through it. So just to have that a social group actually helps you to just stay focused and just get on with your studies. And that is required, of course, the social groups, as everyone said, you are basically an average of the 5 people that you generally hang out with. So choose your group well, make sure their values and their goals kind of align with what you want to achieve, and that should basically get you ahead, I guess.
This is where the Malayali in me comes out, because when I was a student both in school and college, I went to an Indian school that was run by the Indian community, and the ambassador to the UAE was a patron of that school, okay, the Abu Dhabi Indian school, both at school and then back in college, okay, in Chennai. Everyone vies to be in relationship in the good books of the teachers there. But what you just presented here is a total eye-opener for me. So from that point of view, how can a student in Canada better his or her life, okay, with this seriously healthy relationship that he or she maintains with a professor?
So from a grad student perspective, so I think it's applicable for undergrads as well. If these professors, most of the professors in universities, they have great relationships with companies. So a lot of their research is sponsored by these big firms. I know personally that a lot of my friends in my lab, they actually got their offers even before they actually graduated, because the professor actually recommended these people to the company. And it's actually, and some might say it's only for PhD students. No, it actually happens for even undergrad students, because undergrad students do projects under our lab. And if this guy is really good, this guy or girl is really good, the professor really wants to get that person to that company. His first preference would be to get him to do a PhD, but if that doesn't work out, he definitely would recommend him to a company where, if you're lucky, you might not even have to do an interview. They might actually just take you in just by the professor's word. And some of these professors' words carry a long way. And even later on in your career, when you're in your company and when you really want to get something extra done, some research level work done, it's beneficial to have the contact with a good relationship with your professor, because most of the time the professor would be able to take up that research on behalf of the company. And that actually improves your own stature within the company, because you're able to get a lot of research done. Even though it's with the collaboration with the professor, you are able to get those work done properly. So, and yeah, in general, professors are a good, I would say professors are a good bet. Just have a very good relationship with them. Don't try to annoy them. Of course, as I said, you can always question them, etc. But it's for your own sake. I guess it's better not to be on their bad books. But in Canada in general, I've seen professors encourage you questioning them, not insulting them. That's a very big difference between them. There's a difference between insulting and questioning them. You can question them based on, as Jason said, talk about numbers, right? At least I'm from an engineering perspective. No one likes to talk about, oh no, this is good. But people basically will come back and ask you, how good? Give me the number, percentage-wise, how good this is. And that is what, at least, again, I'm from engineering, but I know there are different courses here, but from an engineering perspective, numbers is all that matters. Your feelings, all those things do not really count. All that matters is show it as a proof in quantitative numbers. And if you can do that to your professors, and professor would actually encourage you, and they would actually appreciate you countering them or even showing where they're gone wrong. So yeah, that's what.
Yeah, Jason. When you said that first point, I was like, you were talking about golden nuggets, drop a pro tip. Like, that's such a huge tip. Ushanti is their former dean of the Faculty of Community Services at TMU Ryerson, and she could probably attest to this as well, but alumni will come back to their professors, especially once they're at that 5-year, 10-year stage where they're hiring managers or they're looking for early talent. Go back to the prof, and they will immediately share with you 5 students that you should hire right away. And exactly like she said, even before they graduate, they got offer letters. So CIBC, formerly when I was working with TMU on this, they would hire about 70 students for the summer, and it's for capital markets. It's like a boot camp. You have to be there at 7 a.m. in the morning. Don't expect to leave before 6 p.m. or later. And what they do is the top 30% of that particular batch will leave going into their 4th year with an offer letter of $80,000, and I'm talking about 4 years ago this was the case, of $80,000 as long as they graduate, they start their job right in May. So it is the truth, and these profs will ensure that their top students are in that program because the alumni come back and they'll specifically pick. Going back to my earlier point, employers already know what's in the theory that's being taught. It's like, what else are you doing in clubs and every other part of it? Like Brianna being a student leader there, like all the things that she's doing, and I know what it's like in residence. So Brianna, like you've got some top skills, I'm sure, that you've dealt with in that leadership type position that you're doing. I can't say that if there's a golden nugget to take away, it's what Ashish was talking about.
Before we open the floor up to our audience, one more thing that I would like to hear from from you is, any of you for that matter, is, see, this question about passion. There is an inspiration that actually drives us to choose a particular area of study, but it's passion that keeps us there, right? Because from what little I know of talking with Joel, while you were still in nursing school, you also used to take up jobs with hospitals, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so that was actually like a part of my program. But I did volunteer to like vaccinate and all, like in Hamilton as well. Because yes, like it is kind of like my passion for healthcare. In my personal opinion, it's kind of tough for you to figure out your passion right away. At least that's how it was for me. You might think you want something in grade 12 and you're adamant on it, but you won't even realize it until you actually get into the school and you go through it, which is kind of what happened with me in my first degree. And then I was lucky enough to make the switch. So it really, yes, the passion does play a big role. Like Achin said, the passion is what keeps you in it. Money is a big motivation early on. In grade 12, grade 11, you think about jobs, what job gives you the most money. It's an easy way to get distracted by it as well, but you won't realize it what you really want until you actually get into school, you start studying, and at least for me, it was kind of like an experimental phase where I had to figure out what was right for me.
Brianna would also be able to contribute to this question that I had in mind. See, you are engaged with facilitating, okay, student communities into their residences. Now, this is not simply a part-time job that I believe you are in. This is something that drives you to do. There is something that drives you to do it. Tell us about that passion.
I think it has a lot to do with enjoying leading activities, and I think the leadership aspect, and I think that's also what drove me to kind of be a part of the youth committee when I was, a high school student at church. The program that I'm in is in biomedical sciences, and I'm hoping to get into the healthcare field. And one thing that I have learned from peers, from professors, is that anything you learn in any job, and any role you take on as a student, any club you're a part of, any skill you learn is transferable. And I think that's a big thing of what Jason Achachin was speaking of. One of my big things, and one thing I've really enjoyed, and it's kind of come across through in my high school years as well as university, is helping other people, and specifically in residence, to be able to facilitate these events for my residents, to have them meet new people and make those connections, is a huge thing, because you are the support system here in residence when there are no parents. You're the support system when somebody needs somebody to talk to and they're unsure of where to go, and to be able to even provide even the smallest resource is really fulfilling in a sense, because you're able to help somebody out and help them further their career, their lifestyle, further what they want to do, and even help them realize okay, maybe my program isn't for me, or maybe it helps them understand, actually I'm really interested in this field of study and I want to continue and I want to look into these resources. One specific example I can think of is I did have, a student who was questioning what program they were in. And it's a difficult thing, because in high school, like Joel mentioned, you might have an idea of what you want to do, but until you actually start learning about it and until you have the experience, it's difficult to fully know if that's what's meant for you and that's, God's purpose for you in your life. So as as I was speaking to this one individual and I was kind of providing different resources on campus, I was able to also kind of learn a little more about myself and realize that, you know, by helping other people, you're also hearing their own perspectives and their own challenges in life, and kind of understanding that, by helping somebody, it kind of also helps you. I'm learning skills about how to mediate conflict and how to provide proper resources and how to kind of engage in a discussion, and not just a one-way dialogue with somebody, but continue having a discussion and elaborate and expand on resources and elaborate on how those can specifically apply to that individual. And that's one thing that I've enjoyed in my leadership role here, is that I'm able to continue to practice these skills. So that was a big thing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now the floor is open up for our audience here. You have children going into universities, colleges, institutes. We have students here by themselves. Parents will have their own queries. So, to start with, can we have Usha Auntie share her views on college life in Canada as a teacher for so many years now?
Can I stand here? Hi, thank you, Achin, and thank you for inviting me here. Student orientation is a topic of great interest to me because much before many of you are born, I was involved in student orientations right at University of Toronto for 13 years, then at Ryerson for 16 years. I just came back from another orientation last week. Not that I do all these orientations, I just lead them. I go and do the first 5 minutes of pep-up talk and I come out. Then there's a team that does all of that. We consider orientation as a very important part of being in a university, understanding the university, not exactly what to expect, but to tell every student that we are here for you. You are here to learn, and we are here to make that journey easy for you. But you have to work, you have to cooperate as well. So all the pieces of wisdom that I heard are kind of stories that are very familiar to me. And one thing I'll say, the professors are more than happy to support you in whichever way you want. Last week, one of the students asked me, how do I make sure that the professor likes me? I said, well, there is no gauge for understanding that, but the only thing you can do is to ensure that you do your work, come to class, be a good student, and then if you have issues or questions, get up and participate in the class. If somebody sits there and looks at his cell phone or computer and responds to all the FaceTime, Facebook stuff, the teacher is not going to appreciate that. I have gone to classes where I stand at the back and kind of watch students. School of Nursing in our university has got I don't know how many students come in every year, about 400 students. I watch and I can see that many of them, especially sitting at the laptop, everybody has a laptop, they are answering their emails. They are looking at their Facebook posts. So much so, some of the professors banned students from bringing the laptops, saying that, okay, write down notes and then take it back. Of course, it will change, but anyway. So I don't want to kind of repeat anything that was said here. So a couple of things I want to say is that in as much as technology and technical skills are important, soft skills are extremely important. In a survey of employers, in addition to the technical skills they were looking for, whether you are an engineer or a doctor or a nurse or whoever it is, they talked about the soft skills. How do you communicate? How do you behave? How do you react in different difficult situations? So all of that. So I just don't want to take more time. I want to give you a couple of principles. Now that you are given a lot of practical advice, I have some favorite principles that I usually tell students to kind of live with that. One of the principles is from swiftness to completeness. So we are all in a hurry. We want to do things fast. And then in that process, we don't even realize that we are missing a very important parts of things. And on the other hand, if you emphasize completeness, which is doing the job fully well, it's a big difference. I want to give you an example right there, one simple thing. A student writes a paper, and the mother says, this is something I saw on TV. The mother says, okay, you put your paper there, I can proofread it for you by the time you get up in the morning, so you can correct that and take it. And the student goes, no, the professor doesn't care for spelling mistakes, it's okay. So she takes the paper, submits it, she gets a C. Why? The paper is not complete, because the expectation is that you are able to write correct English, you are able to write a paper which is worth its name, and therefore, if you are not paying attention, so you did it in a hurry, you are not paying attention to the completeness of it, and that takes you, that does not reward you at all. So there is a whole notion called fast thinking and slow thinking. There's actually a psychologist who wrote a book, Thinking Fast and Slow. He got the Nobel Prize in economics. Why did he get that? He talked about the fact that sometimes we are reflexive thinkers, we are instinctive thinkers, we are impulsive thinkers. And then sometimes that does not pay well at all. For example, you sit in a class, you come for the second lecture or in a class, you hear the professor and say, oh, this professor is boring, I don't want to take this class. This is not something I want to do. That's impulsive thinking. You haven't assessed the entire scenario. On the other hand, if you are a slow thinker, you will assess and see, is it something I need? So the casualty of some of this fast thinking when you drop courses is the elective courses that you can take. Because the required courses you have to take anyway. The elective, you will jump from one to another. Before you drop something, think very carefully. So, am I saying that fast thinking is bad and slow thinking is good? You need both. But the fast thinking becomes more fruitful with experience. So as young people going into university, watch out for your fast thinking, go more on the slow thinking. Look at the pros and cons of stuff that was mentioned here a number of times, and then you make up your mind, and then do that. I have lots of stuff to say about that. I will just not take your time. The second principle is from distraction to focus. As I said, I watched students reading all their FaceTime posts and stuff like that. That's distraction. We are distracted by so many things in this era. I always used to tell my students, I'm grateful that I'm not a student now, because I'd be tempted by all this stuff. Look at all the YouTube videos you can watch with your computer, your laptop, in the class. So distraction actually takes you away from your goal. So focus is what you need. Now, in that focus, there is lots of books written on that. A guy called Eckhart Tolle, wrote a book on the power of now. You are sitting here now. Any minute you waste on your past, any minute you spend on your past, thinking about your past, any minute you spend on your future while you're sitting here is wasted. You have to focus on now. So that whole principle of focus on now is extremely important, especially you sit in classrooms. You may not understand everything that's being said, but while you focus, you are able to say, okay, what is it that I didn't understand? So then you can then pick it up and then solve it. A final point I want to make is, again, it was mentioned here a number of times by all the speakers, is from individualism to teamwork. We all we all are our own individuals, our own ways of doing things, our own study modes, our own ways of our own likes and dislikes. But cultivating a team of people who you can depend on is extremely important. In fact, studies of university graduates have said over and over again that when you ask a university graduate, what was the best part of your university life? They'll say, my classmates, my friends who I studied together. Which is a put down for the professors, because the professors were supposed to have done this job anyway. But the point is that companionship, the learning that you do through all of this is extremely important. They'll stand you in good stead, as it was all mentioned here, in your future, and also make you a full person to develop, and to also recognize your own limitations. Sometimes you are somebody who gets annoyed very fast, no patience at all. Somebody will say, not so fast, let's calm down. So there are big benefits of being a social being, and as I said, that teaches you also the social supports that are, the soft skills that are required. I'll stop here. This is a topic of great interest to me. I can write a book on it, but I won't take more of your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. The floor is still open. Sure. Mr. Simon.
Yeah, my name is Simon. I'm a college teacher. I don't teach conceptual things like Dr. Usha George does or did. I teach at diploma level and undergrad level at college here at Seneca for the last 20 years. I'm a business teacher, basically. We teach hands-on practical stuff. We talk about the containers and containerization, and Malcolm McLean, how to load container or how to load cargo in the aircrafts, and ULDs and such stuff, or even banking, international letters of credit and so on. Anyway, that's my background. I just wanted to complete what someone mentioned here. I think it was this young man here sitting there about the different ways you get your classes. There are, these days, everything is online learning. There are synchronous classes and asynchronous classes. Preferably, I don't see many young people here, more of adults here. If you have the option, please prefer or pick the synchronous classes or hybrid or even high flex classes. There's a sort of a personal touch, like the young man said. Otherwise, these teachers these days just record the session and go and leave it to the student to study or not. That's my piece of advice about the classes. If you have the option, you will probably have the option. So pick the synchronous classes. That way, you have a personal touch. I make sure that every single student is picked and they are brought to the class, they are engaged in the class, they participate in the class. That's extremely important. That participation is extremely important. That's how I figure out who is a good student, who is not. And every semester, at the end of every semester, I at least get employment for about 20 students from every batch, 20. At FedEx Trade Networks, UPS, at various places, Kinnenagel, these are all logistics companies. So therefore, one thing, profs are also human beings. So be friendly, like this engineer said. You don't criticize them, but you can ask questions, you can challenge them. We, in fact, encourage students to challenge us, and we like that. And sometimes, some students' responses or challenges, we feel, I have a lot of respect for those students who challenge me, So therefore, be human, and like what Jason said, you know what, more than your technical skills, your leadership skills and such things, that's extremely important for you to go up the ladder. So basically that's it. And also, like Dr. Shajo said, be focused. Don't get distracted by other things. There are 101 different things, 101, these days, social media and this and that. But stay focused on what you're doing, and you will be successful. Good luck, young folks. Thank you.
When Simon Uncle was saying this, it just brought to mind something that we learn in music. പാട്ട് കേട്ട് പഠിക്കാം. സംഗീതം ഗുരുമുഖത്തു നിന്ന് പഠിക്കാൻ പറ്റൂ. You can learn a song by listening to it. But if you want to learn music, you need a teacher. That's the difference.
Just one last thing, because we all talked about passion, etc. over here. So I just want to mention that people talk about passion, but that doesn't mean that if you think this is my passion, that is just easy for you. That's not how it works. A passion has to work along with some competency for that, what you're doing. So there is, even you might like something really well, that's well and good, but there is still a certain amount of hard work to get that competency to do that passion well. So don't assume that if you're passionate about something, it's a easy path for you, or if that is something that is easy for you. Anything that you're passionate about, there is still a certain amount of hard work to get to that competency level. Just to want to mention that on the.
Just further on. Sorry, you can go ahead.
Yeah, all of you have given a lot of insights, and definitely makes me feel go back to university, though I'm too old and late now. Jason, you gave a very classic example of the current trends, as you mentioned, that companies are looking for students who know Excel, Python, and communication skill. How can they give meaningful insights and quantify? That's in the job market, everyone wants numbers quantified, right? What I want to know is, 6-7 years ago, nobody knew Python, right? Now, today, data is the most empowering aspect of business. How do you empower students with regard to educating them and making them know that these are the current trends? This is what organizations are looking for. These are the skills that you should be having. It's not just academic and overall personality development, but there are certain skills that the market is looking for. How do you empower students, make them know this is the trend, go forward?
Yeah, so I'm part of a larger group called Student Affairs. So Shanti was talking about orientation and things like that. So under the bucket of Student Affairs, you have what Brianna's doing, like the resident side, student life, all sorts of things are there, international students. So I fall under what's called the Career Center. And the Career Center is a central hub that supports students, faculty, and employers in engaging with each other. And so although I'm on the part of the Career Center which brings the employers onto campus, there's two other sides to the Career Center, which is the Career Development Unit, which we have 16,000 students in the Mississauga campus, and we have about 3 career strategists and 7 career counselors. Now, what these individuals do is, through working with our outreach consultant, who's an internal stakeholder, or think of them as a relationship manager that works with the various faculties on campus to bring in the inquiries that you're asking about, like, hey, how does a professor have up-to-date information about what the labor market trends are looking for? How do we forecast 5 years from now what the market is looking for? And so I very purposefully use anthropology students in my example because everybody's looking for tech students, is what we see. And so what we do is these individuals, so we don't get the summer off. We're staff members, we're continuously working. So right from May till August, we're collecting insights, data, up-to-date trends by engaging with employers, by researching, whether it's through the reports that we get from various outlets, to then pass that information back to the faculty members. We are also invited into the classrooms, and Ushanti knows this, we work together from a career center standpoint, and many times we've been able to work with her nursing team, the social work team. There's many clients from when Ushanti was the dean, where we would go in and support the professors in helping their students get these insights. So we typically do 90-minute workshops where we talk about labor market trends specifically for that program. And so the way we work is we have specialists that focus on each faculty, and within each faculty they have all the programs. So my specialist teams would then ensure that they have up-to-date research on it, and that's how we pass it. So that's a little bit of the insight to what a central career center does within the realm of a university and things like that. Now, each faculty at times have their own individuals that do this and pass it on in the form of handouts or one-to-ones or invitations into the classroom. So hopefully that answers that question.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was just saying about passion. One thing that I also realized from going from high school, you are usually being told by your parents to study, 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 right? And so that passion comes from outward. Outward, people are coming and telling you to study, and that's what you're doing. When you get to university, no one's telling you to do that. No one's telling you study, study, study. Half of you are probably going to be away from your parents, so no one's telling you that, sorry. That's when you start getting your passion from inwards, because I mentioned, you're surrounded by people who have this passion to go somewhere in their life, to reach certain goals. And so right now, maybe you're not really, some of you are interested, some of you maybe are not, and you don't have that passion right now, but when you get to college and university levels, you will start having that passion inwards, and then that can branch out to what you're interested in. So that's one thing I realized.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I do a full circle on passion? Sure. So when I was studying in Coimbatore, I joined the PSG College of Technology, and I started my program in MBA, and I specialize in human resources and marketing. And so as part of the program, the first years that go in, they have this huge 1-week program called WOW, Week of Wonder. And so there's multiple competitions. And so for young people who have the opportunity through orientation and other things to be part of this kind of opportunities, just jump out there and do it. But out of 200 students, I was able to obtain the opportunity to be called What's the Best Manager. It's like I said, it's a 1-week-long competition. You're put through the ringer, and you finally get this opportunity. And so as part of that, the first year when you win this, you automatically become the secretary of the student union. When you move into the second year, you have an option. The option is to either become the chairperson of the student body, or number 2, you can run the career center. It was all student-led and things like that. And so, like Brianna and maybe our other students that are here, I decided to take that servant leadership role and go into this career center type opportunity. And this is on the days of dial-up, and email was not really a thing. We were using Lotus Notes and technology that was so poor back then to communicate with employers, and we sent teams around South India to come onto campus and to recruit. And it's so funny because of all the things that I've done throughout my career. So I've been in software, technology, the internet business, telecommunications, and things like that. It's full circle that yeah, Joel would say like, those commission checks or those nice salaries and things like that, it's all great. But what I found was I came back to my roots of what I enjoyed most, which was just serving other people. And that's how I ended up coming back to being in a career center. It's full circle for me. And so when I sit down with students, I always ask them, hey, listen, I know you don't understand where you're going today or tomorrow, but think about when you were a child or when you were much younger. If you were able to do anything you wanted without financial constraint, what is the one thing that you would do every day? Right? And it's so interesting to hear different people say, hey, I love playing video games. All right, let's start walking through that journey. What about video games is it that you like? And so different people talk about the music behind video games. I just love, those little beats. Okay, so what kind of background do you have in music, right? And you start seeing that these students are putting jingles together or little things together, and we find a way or a pathway where their passion will not stop them from getting to where they want to go. And so I just wanted to kind of loop that all in with that one thing, that even in my life, I found like, it doesn't matter what you're getting paid, but if you found what you're passionate about, it helps you get to where you're feeling most satisfied in your life. And I think it goes back to that cultural competency that you were asking about as well. I think inherently seeing through this church that servant leadership model that we have, I think has always sat in me, and that's where I'm at today as well.
This is a beautiful movie that won the Oscars about a decade and a half ago. It's called Life is Beautiful. It's an Italian movie by Roberto Benigni. Yeah, and in that movie there is a scene that has stuck by me very, very, very astonishingly. It is where this protagonist has an uncle who works as a waiter. Okay, and when he's being pulled into that job because he's not being offered any other job and he needs the money so badly, the uncle tells his nephew to serve is not to be looked down upon by people, for God himself is a servant. So when you are serving people, you're behaving like God to them. Yeah? Right? See, somebody else said, if you're working for money and you say that you're passionate about that work, you are lying. Of course, we all need money to live. Even I do. For all that I say, even I do. I have a family to feed. But money might come, might not come. But if you can sleep well at night, yeah, if you can sleep for 7 hours, 8 hours straight without a break and feel fresh in the morning and feel so excited to do what you were doing the previous day, that's passion. If we have nothing more to add or ask, we shall bring this session to a conclusion. And it would be very unbecoming of me to just look at everyone here and say, thank you. Okay? Even to you, Brianna. Okay? It goes more than that. What we did here was open our lives up. Okay? Where our experiences became your experiences, your anxieties became our anxieties, and that's what friendship is all about. And that's what Christ taught us. Yeah? And the kind of satisfaction, the kind of life that we actually garner to ourselves through this friendship will help us a long way, and God takes pleasure in such relationships. But, thank you very much. Yes, Juno.
Thank you, Acha. So as we come to the conclusion of our symposium, can we all please just show our appreciation by giving our panel a round of applause? So I know that, we're pretty much practically very well late into the evening, but we have arranged some snacks for you. It's not much, but please do take part. Sorry. And also, please take this opportunity to network with our panelists here if you have got those personal questions that maybe you were not too ready to ask now, but you wanted to ask in person, or also, if you wanted their contact information so that you may be able to keep in touch with them for any further information. Also, for our friends, basically, who weren't able to make it, and you know of such a person who had a circumstance or whatever, who wanted to come but wasn't able to make it, our session is being recorded, so we can forward it to you. If you're interested, please make sure that you leave your email with us so that we may include you in that email. Other than that, I don't have anything much to say. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank once again our panelists, as well as Achin, for their time spent here, as well as the thoughtful and meaningful insights and discussions that we had. I would also like to thank the team that worked behind this. We had various members of our committee put together posters, and also the church executive committee who helped us to market this event, and also people who helped us out by, especially in the tech team. I know it's just Josh here, but please thank them as well, because they put a lot of effort into making this happen. I think that's it, Achin. I think, Sunyanti, if you want to lead us in closing prayer. I just put Sunyanti on the spot, so that's why.
Father God, thank you, Master. Thank you for all your goodness, Master. Thank you, Lord, for this day that you've added in our lives, Jesus. We heard so many things, Master, so many things. But one important thing, Master, that we heard loud and clear is, Master, prayer is power and our pathway to success, Master. Father, enable us, Father, that we submit ourselves into your will. And Father, that we yield our lives to your will alone, Master, that you would lead us and guide us, and you would enable us, Father, you would give us the wisdom of discernment to choose the right thing, Father. And Father, that we would acknowledge you in everything in our lives, Jesus. Every step of our way, Father, even for our new children who are leaving homes, Father, we want to pray that, Father, your hand of protection would be over them, Master. That, Father, that they would fear you and acknowledge you. That they would, Father, ask you for guidance, Master. When they are scared, when they are fearful, Master, when they are in doubt, Master, when they are anxious about things, Father, your word says to come to you, Master. Father, we want to commit the children, our youths, our parents into your hands, Master. That in and through everything, that we glorify you and praise you, Master. We ask all this in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
Brothers and sisters in Christ, we are all blessed by God who created heaven and earth. May the spiritual quest that we engaged ourselves in be showered with blessings from on high, and may God Almighty from his highest throne hear our prayers, heed to our petitions, and grant us grace to continue in life. Amen. Thank you, everyone, and good night. But please, snacks before you leave.